guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
So I watched my defense do such a number on Kirk Cousins that he was 1 of 11 on third down. 1 of 11 on third down just 4 days back. Yeah. And then all of a sudden last night, he goes 8 of 15 on third down against Bill Belichick's defense.
Right.
Well, something is amiss there. I watched my team control the football, and it was, 37 minutes to 23 minutes. And then last night, I see Kirk Cousins controls the ball for 36 minutes to 24 minutes against Belichick.
Yeah. There it is. Undisputed. Skip Bayless. Was he kind of, I feel like was he praising Belichick or denigrating Kirk?
He was denigrating Kirk and then questioning Belichick and the legitimacy of the Patriots, because he spent the first 3 minutes of that basically doing a victory lap of my team went in there last week and kicked the crap out of them and blah, blah. And now we're 2-3-0 against Kirk Cousins with 2 backup quarterbacks and a lot of fun stuff.
What was the meeting like when those guys decided, all right, we're gonna duke it out. It's gonna be Skip and Shannon Sharp, just the hottest sports takes, just duking it out for like 2 hours a day. What do we call the show? Undisputed.
And in the conversation about talking about that game, there was only one question: how do we involve LeBron? We got to involve LeBron somehow.
And Tim Tebow. And a Tim Tebow debate.
If LeBron played quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, what would their record be? Go.
Oh, my God. Is Joe Flacco elite? Coming up next on Undisputed.
Skip makes like, $8 million a year? So
he's doing
just fine.
It's funny. People make fun of Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, but really the joke's on all of us because those guys make a combined like $16 or $17 million.
Yes.
So anyhow, a guy that makes way more than that is old Kirky boy here. Welcome into Mackey and Judd. So write that down Wednesday. We're going to make our weekly predictions and hold each other accountable. Later on in the show, we also do a football version over on Purple Daily, and old Macadac is grinding through a travel nightmare from yesterday here. So pardon him if he just falls asleep halfway through the recording here.
We're prepared to take the reins.
Yeah.
At any moment. If you go narcoleptic on us, we're prepared to take the reins.
Actually, on Purple Daily, I may have a Minnesota goodbye topic for you, Declan, today.
Okay.
There's been a couple like flight related things that I've wanted to bring up, and
oh my God, I can't wait.
And I will just we'll put that over on Purple Daily today. So here is my question to you guys: Kirk Cousins this season is he's 1-1 in primetime games, official primetime games. If you want to go standalone games, we could count like the Saints game in London and then the Cowboys game, which wasn't really a standalone game, but it was a nationally televised game with Tony Romo and company. But I'm just looking at primetime games that happened at night.
Yep.
He's 1-1 this season, lit the Patriots up on Thanksgiving. Just one of probably his best performance of the season, if you take away a couple bad passes. Maybe the Packers game, but it's one of his 2 best performances. Last year, the Vikings were 2-1 as a team in primetime games. The home win over the Steelers. Was that the game where they almost blew like a 4-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter?
Yes, correct. And they were actually 2-2, but Kirk had COVID for the Packers game.
Yeah,
so they played 4 primetime games, but he went 2-1.
Yeah, that's what I should clarify. The Vikings were 2-1 when Kirk played in primetime games last year. You had the home win over the Steelers. You had Cousins was actually terrible in that game, but the team kind of carried. Then you had the low scoring road win over the Bears, where he had 87 passing yards, but it was just one of those weird games at Chicago. The loss was to Cooper Rush, but the team was 2-1. And then 2020, the COVID year, they were 1-1 in primetime. Road win against the Bears again. Cousins led the game-winning drive halfway through the fourth. Mm-hmm. The loss was the game against Seattle, where Alexander Mattison failed to get the yard. Yes. It was just right there for the taking. But Kirk went toe-to-toe with Russell Wilson in that game and did very well. So over the last 3 years, primetime Kirk and the Vikings are 4-3 in the primetime games he plays. He's not always perfect, but the team is above 500 in primetime games over the last 3 seasons. So what does that mean? Where are you sort of at with the primetime Kirk mocking that everyone has done for years and years, that it's just impossible for a Kirk-led team to perform in primetime?
So I got this note from you last night, and I started to give this great thought because there's 2 different directions to take this. we can look at a game like the game at Chicago last year, which the Vikings won, and say, okay, but he was 12 of 24. He had 87 yards. Now, he did have 2 touchdowns, but, 87 yards. Or the Pittsburgh game, 216 yards. But the big picture conversation here is this. Can Kirk Cousins led teams win in prime time? Like, I think that's the question. So I don't think it's what are his stats. Against the Patriots, phenomenal. Against Philadelphia in week 2 on a Monday night, threw for 221 yards, but he also had 3 picks and 1 touchdown. So Kirk Cousins in prime time is now 11 and 18. Because that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
Like quarterback wins or not, the narrative on Kirk in prime time has always been the record. It's not the statistics. We never even bring up the stats for the most part.
So, well, I think the Crusaders do in defense. If he has a good statistical game, it's like, well, it's not his fault.
But the national talking heads and us who try to say or who have talked about Kirk's struggles in primetime bring up the records. He is 2-10 on Monday nights, which fell to 2-10 with the week 2 loss in Philadelphia. But where I stand right now is I think the last 2 years, and obviously things have changed drastically in Cousins' world this year, but I think the last 2 years have unlocked a different Kirk Cousins conversation about what he's done. He started to lead fourth quarter comebacks last year. Mm-hmm. Like before that, they're very sporadic. So you look at his first 2 or 3 years here, especially his first 2, and he basically didn't do it. So I think in the last 2 years, there's a definite shift in the narrative about Cousins and what he's able to do in the clutch. And where I stand right now is very much, I am more than willing to give him a chance here. He has proven it. The Patriots game was just damn impressive. That being said, I think it's important too, not to get over our skis in this conversation and determine that it's all fixed, because what are we seeing, especially this year from Kirk? I think what we're seeing is what Kirk does when Kirk has a coach that empowers him, that trusts him, that when things go wrong, doesn't, if not yell, then certainly cast an eye of, oh, God, did you screw us again? So it's my opinion that we are seeing a Kirk that I think it's going to be very interesting to see where he takes this team. Now, the Cousins fans will say, and they're right about this part, the playoff win against the Saints was impressive. Like the pass to Thielen, that was a really clutch pass. The pass to Kyle was a really clutch pass. So I am very open to the fact that Kirk Cousins, I am not going to dismiss him or this team if they get in the playoffs. Am I convinced that he is now the greatest big-time QB of all time? No. But if the conversation is going to be Kirk Cousins' record in prime time is this, then I think it's only fair that the discussion revolves around that and not trying to parcel through the stats of, well, he was terrible against Pittsburgh, but they won. That's not fair. That gets to a point where I think we're now trying to look for what went wrong instead of, did you win the bleeping game? And by the way, at the end of that Pittsburgh game, that was not Cousins. That was the Vikings defense that darn near blew it.
I think also, too, as Macadac is, in his narcoleptic state a little bit here.
Go ahead and give your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
That's Macadac. Okay.
I think two ways to look at this from the primetime perspective. I think locally he has done a great job of winning a lot of people over, including, obviously, members of this show alone of, hey, we want him to do this. Can you do this? Can you rise up in a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter when you're trailing? And can you deliver a dagger consistently? And he has done that. Yes, 6 fourth-quarter comebacks. I believe that's actually the most from any Vikings quarterback in a single season since Warren Moon did it, I believe, like in 94. So he has done a great job, in my opinion, locally of winning the Vikings fans who had questions about him. And obviously there are a lot of Vikings fans who have had questions if he's legitimately that guy. Nationally, I think it's still in a wait-and-see mode. Just in the national podcast that I listened to, when he had the dud against the Cowboys, it was classic. It was grade A fodder for them. And I don't blame them, by the way. As someone who if I wasn't familiar with Kirk and I only knew him from a national side, I knew him because he doesn't live up to his contract or doesn't live up in primetime games, just as a producer in my own right, I would have that as bulletin board material for my host to discuss on a national platform. I think he won't be able to really shed that narrative until the playoffs, and unfortunately until the last game he plays this season. And how I think, Judd, I think you and I maybe talked about this, or might have actually been with Realistic Randy earlier this week as well. how he performs in the playoffs, and honestly, if the Vikings lose, let's say, at any point in the postseason, whether that's the wild card round or even up to a Super Bowl, how he performs in that losing effort, I think does determine how people look at him. If it was a fluke thing, like a Blair Walsh situation, which I know we're warning about here with Greg Joseph, and that's one thing, but until he kind of proves that he can do it in the playoffs and how he does it in the playoffs, then maybe the national perspective will shift a little bit.
We got Phil back.
Amen. This is reminiscent of my travel itinerary yesterday.
Yeah, and
very
also
choppy and disconnected.
I believe your microphone is completely disconnected because we can hear you through your computer speakers, right? Your computer microphone right now. So it's great. This is great. This is your computer microphone that's being picked up and not your actual mic.
All right, carry on. Carry on. I'll be right back.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Incredible.
We'll keep going. Yeah,
Fumble
I
the
just think
snap.
this is as open as I've ever been towards not agreeing that Kirk lacked a clutch gene.
Yep.
And I really think it's very fair to say that seemed to be lacking for the most part, not always, obviously, through going into 2021. I think it began to change. I mean, heck, if you just look at the fourth quarter comebacks last year, right, Dex? It began to change last year. But I do think that these are very important discussions that we stay on. If we're going to talk about what has Kirk done in prime time, we can't dismiss the wins because we don't like his stats. And then cherry pick, well, the stats are bad and they lost, so that's why. So I think if it's going to be, Kirk Cousins is 11-18 in primetime games. And nationally, that's not good, so that's going to remain a talking point. Then I think we have to stay on that track. And if Kirk plays like he did against the Patriots, extra credit. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But it can't also be, well, Kirk's stats weren't that great, but they won, so it must have been in spite of Kirk. This is very much a conversation about can he win? And most importantly, too, not him, can his team win in primetime games? Can he lift his team? That's the entire thing, Dex, about what Kirk has done this whole season. When we fixate, and I understand it's probably an issue at times, on his stats are way down, his stats aren't great. Okay, that could be a problem. But are the Vikings winning games? The answer to that is they won 9, so yes. And are the Vikings winning games because Kirk Cousins is helping them? And the answer to that is most definitely, as you pointed out, with comeback wins with 6 right now? Yes. So I think the Cousins conversation right now can become convoluted by, well, it's not what I'm looking for exactly. And all I think that this show has looked for from day one is, can a quarterback who's paid very handsomely, can he win games? Can he help his team? And Kirk Cousins right now has been far more part of the solution than the problem himself, which is why this whole thing about stats gets a little bit old to me, because it's sort of like, well, now we've shifted it to the stats conversation. Now, all I've ever wanted is, can his team win games? And the answer this year is yes.
All right, let's see. Yes.
Oh, hello. Thank
we
you.
got him back. Oh, welcome back to the
back.
show, Phil Mackey.
On
2 hours sleep.
Warm welcome. Oh, God. It's about 2.5, but we're going here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did hear everything you were saying, and I want to add a little, because what we're basically doing here is we're sort of, we're sizing Kirk and the Vikings up, not just as a team that can compete and maybe finish 500, which has been pretty much every Kirk Cousins team in history for 8 years. It's, can they punch up? Can they punch up when trailing in the fourth? Can they punch up in a big primetime game? I would add another checkbox here. So I think we all agree we feel a lot more comfortable with him and the team with him when trailing in the fourth now compared to 3 years ago. In a primetime game now compared to 3 years ago. I'll add another one here. How about games in December and January? Because this is when the big boy football starts, right? This is where the actual contenders start to separate themselves. So if you, and I just pulled a sampling, my thought here was, who are some of the shining star quarterbacks that set the bar in the league? Sometimes people get irritated when we compare Kirk to the best or the Vikings to the best. Well, the Vikings are the 8th best defense, a couple years ago or whatever. Well, the Vikings offense is like 11. That's pretty good. Well, there's only 32 teams. The goal is to win a Super Bowl. And so we should compare the Vikings to the best. We should compare Kirk Cousins to the best. Not saying he has to be Tom Brady in his prime, but like that's the bar. Patrick Mahomes is the bar. How close are you to the bar? So in December, Patrick Mahomes' teams in his career are 17-2 in the month of December. That's actually one of the craziest stats in the NFL. That once a Patrick Mahomes Chiefs team, Andy Reid could take some of that credit as well. Once they get to December, they're done. They're done fooling around. They're done tinkering. They're done. They're just full go. Tom Brady teams in his career 69-17 in the month of December. A lot of Bill Belichick, some defenses in there too, but that's okay. How do we crescendo at the right time? Russell Wilson having a disaster season, but in his career, Russell Wilson teams are 30-15 in December. Aaron Rodgers teams, a disaster year this year, but Aaron Rodgers teams are 38-14 in the month of December. I'll give you one more. Lamar Jackson, former MVP. His Ravens teams are 12-3 in the month of December. So a lot of the top quarterbacks and their teams are crescendoing at the end of the season. Kirk Cousins' teams historically are 16-19, 3 games under 500 in the month of December. 7-10 as a Viking. Also, December is his lowest passer rating month. Would you know that November, we talk about Kirktober, yeah. Kirkvember is actually the month. By far his best passer rating month. And so do we trust him going into the month of December and then the month of January? I'll add this, going on the road. Cousins' record as a Viking on the road in December and January is 5-7, I believe, if I did the research right. 3 of those wins are against the Lions and the Bears. So there was a Saints playoff win, right, 2019, and then there was a Chargers win like 2 years ago in December. So that's another box. Can a Kirk Cousins-led team, it's not all him, there's some defensive things in there that bring that record down and whatnot, some coaching things, but can they be better than kind of a, or close to 500 team in December and actually throttle down?
That's an intriguing statistic because at least during Kirk's time here, his December home games have been played indoors, which seemingly should help a lot. Like, because you could say if it's outdoors, the weather is always bad or something. But you know what? I am more than willing to present a blank canvas in my thoughts towards Cousins and Kevin O'Connell based on the fact that O'Connell and Cousins pairing have gone places I probably didn't expect. I didn't expect Kirk to be this clutch. No way. And so I'm willing to put some of that previous Kirk stuff aside and say, let's see here. I think that it's very, very fair to take a wait-and-see approach because they continue to reach plateaus and they continue to do things that I think we didn't expect, Declan.
Yeah, and that's where can the coach not change the statistics of the quarterback? You know, can you instead change the wiring and the molding of him? You can't make a 35-year-old quarterback make Patrick Mahomes like throws like that. That doesn't happen. But can you change the mindset and can you change situations where before, you know, the Justin Jefferson play of the epic catch in Buffalo or the Adam Thielen touchdown last week against the Patriots? Man, 85 to 90% of the time, that is a check down to Conklin. That is a check down to Dalvin Cook, Alex Madison, whoever you want to call it. And he has done a brilliant job at changing that mindset. And Kirk's stats have suffered. And, you know, I think we had this conversation like 3 weeks ago. It might have been on Purple Daily. But, you know, his next contract, it's not going to be probably a bigger or as big contract because his numbers have taken a dive. Now, for the betterment of the team, game-winning drives in the moment, yes, it's been great. That all that stuff has worked out for them. But from the Cousins camp, from his agent camp, he's like, oh, crap, if I have a passer rating that is 20 points lower than my normal statistical norm during my last 5-6 years, it's not that the Vikings might not pay me. I'm not going to get another big contract. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum where Cousins' narrative is shifting potentially in a positive way, but his long-term value, even though he's 34, 35, it's probably still going to go down because he's having a statistically poor season.
It's my humble opinion that Kirk Cousins has gotten his big paydays. So those are like he broke the bank when he should have. Credit to him. He's one of the he is part of one of the great negotiating teams of all time. There's no question. I think that Kirk would argue that yes, but I'm winning games, so that shouldn't knock my payday down in a big way, and that's a wait and see how that negotiation plays out. All of that being said, what I like is, and to your point about the checkdowns to Conklin previously or in 2022, TJ Hawkinson, what I like about it is this. What Kevin O'Connell is presenting Kirk doesn't really have consistently all the time. It does sometimes, that option. And so he's forcing him. His stats are down because he can't pad him. And that's the thing I keep saying. And I know that the Kirk stands are going to run with that and say, you're a hater. You are a Kirk hater. You see, Judd, you showed your true colors. But it's the reality of it. Kevin O'Connell has gotten Kirk to a point where Kevin O'Connell wants what he wants, not what Kirk wants. And so the statistical thing is why I always said the stats, in my opinion, a lot of times were hollow because they weren't stats that were meaningful to wins. Throwing that ball to Jefferson was risky. It was low percentage as hell. It's an unbelievable catch. I mean, he made 2 passes to Jefferson against the Patriots that were low percentage. But guess what? That was the play. And Kevin O'Connell wanted that play, and he got it. That's a huge improvement on a check down to Cook, a check down to a tight end. So this is why, and this is where Kirk is winning now. Where Kirk previously did put up great stats, but what did they mean? They were hollow. These stats aren't. These stats mean something because, yes, they're down, but what are they doing? They are directly contributing to wins, not a resume.
Last thing here before we get to write that down and old Macadac's predictions and internet gremlins will join us as well.
Love the gremlins.
Taking a look at and we might probably discuss this too on Purple Daily. So the quarterback rankings are out for the Ringer, these new, quarterback weekly polls. It's power rankings of quarterbacks. So It was updated today from Steven Ruiz of the Ringer. And Kirk is he went up 1 spot, but he's only 14th after the Patriots win and after the week slate of games. So the current quarterback's ahead of him. Tannehill is at 13, which I guess you can make. He's kind of the AFC version of Kirk, right? Like a system guy. And I think I like Kirk's more natural abilities than Tannehill, but you can make a case. He kind of is AFC version of Kirk.
Sure, but I agree with you.
Number 12 is Tua. I actually think he should be a lot higher on this list, but I get, smaller sample size of that. He's only been good for the 7 games he's played in this year. Yes. 11, Jalen Hurts, which again, I still think is far too low. Trevor Lawrence is 10, actually. And then Geno Smith, 9, Aaron Rodgers, 8, Dak Prescott, 7. So even though Kirk had the bad performance against the Cowboys, which certainly hurt some narrative and gave people fodder, Rodgers is number 8 right now. Okay. He started at number 1 preseason. He has now fallen to number 8. Mm-hmm. But still, Tannehill, Tua, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith. It's interesting.
But the thing about it is that, and this is where fans of one player like Kirk lose me. In this case right now, okay, he is around the top 10. I have only one question: is he winning games? It's the only question I've ever really had. And that's why it's so maddening to hear, well, who cares? It's quarterback wins. I don't care. Okay, but here's the difference. Quarterbacks play the entire game. They are entrusted with your most precious asset. They have the football in their hands. They are the most important player, I would argue, positionally in all of sports. Mm-hmm. So are they winning games? And you know what we should do right now? We should do a 4th quarter quarterback ranking, because that's when I care about it. I mean, that's the crunch. That's the crunch time, right? Are you coming through in crunch time? Previously, there were a lot of times that we could make up all the excuses we wanted that Kirk wasn't. Now he is. He gets full credit for that.
Speaking of shedding some primetime narratives and some 4th quarter comebacks here, Judd, why don't you tell everyone how you've been shedding some weight and how they also can start shedding some weight before the new year starts?
Exactly. So it is the holiday season, and right now you're on the couch and you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't like how I look, but I'm going to wait till January 1st. Why wait? Why wait when you can join me and so many from the PD family aboard the Livia Weight Control Center's plan? I'm going to tell you right now, lost 40 pounds, feeling great. Most importantly, the people at Livia are going to help you keep that weight off. And right now, a holiday deal for you that's going to incentivize you to get to this before the January 1st date, where it becomes a cliche to try to lose weight. Save 50%. It's the best offer of the year, Livea has right now a 50% savings, 855, go LIVEA, Livea.com, LIVEA.com. That is your gift to yourself of weight loss.
All right. Write that down. Predictions coming up next. Can old Dex Tweets hold on to this batting champ title? We got accountability.
Can
session.
Mackey come back?
We're wrong. Can Phil maybe take the home run title? Yeah. Can Judd stop checking?
No,
down?
I'm talking about come
know.
back to the show.
Or even that as well. It might be just accountability of just Judd, Declan, and our lucky guest Jake that's coming up.
Oh,
Write
Jake.
that down. Coming up.